I let a man sleep in my guest room one rainy night. That's all it was supposed to be, just one night. I didn't plan anything. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't even looking at him like that, not at first. But what happened at midnight, that night, it changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and myself. I know what you're probably thinking. I've thought it too. How could she? Or worse, why didn't she just leave if she was unhappy? I get it. You want the clean version. The black and white version. But love, real life? It's messy, complicated, sometimes shameful. You can judge me. And maybe you should. But before you do, just listen. Because behind every mistake, every betrayal, every whispered confession we swore we'd take to our graves, there's a story. And mine began the day Jasper walked into my life and flipped everything upside down. He wasn't supposed to mean anything. He was just a stranger I offered a little kindness to. A photographer passing through town. A guest staying in my house for one night because a storm rolled in and the hotels were all booked. That's all. But then he looked at me, really looked at me. Not like a man checking out a woman, but like someone trying to read a book that's been sitting dusty on a shelf for years. He didn't just see me, he saw everything I was trying so hard to hide. And that was the beginning. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's not just about lust or temptation or secrets whispered in the dark. It's about what happens when someone finally sees you after years of being invisible. It's about that quiet ache you carry when your marriage feels more like a roommate agreement than a love story. When you smile at family dinners but cry in the shower when no one can hear you. When you start to wonder if this emptiness is just what the rest of your life will feel like. I wasn't looking for Jasper, but something in me was starving. And he saw that hunger, and he offered me something I hadn't felt in years. If you're still here, still listening, thank you. I'm not proud of what happened, but I'm not going to lie either. I made choices, and those choices changed everything. So, let me tell you what happened. From the beginning. From the first moment our worlds collided, to the night I let him sleep in my guest room, and the moment, just past midnight, that cracked my life wide open. I'm Camille. I'm 39. I've been married to Andrew for 12 years. We live in a quiet town just outside Asheville. I work part-time as a floral designer, mostly weddings, the occasional event. It's creative, peaceful, predictable. Andrew, he's in finance, always flying somewhere, always on his phone, in some meeting, some deal, some client dinner. He's not a bad man. He's just not here. Not really. Not for a long time. We share a house. A mortgage, a calendar full of family birthdays and dentist appointments. But it's been years since we shared a moment. And if I'm being honest, I stopped trying. You can only knock on a closed door for so long before your knuckles start to bleed. The night I met Jasper was the annual community art fundraiser, a local gallery turned pop-up event. Wine, small plates. Everyone dressed up, pretending to care about brushstrokes and symbolism. I was in charge of the floral arrangements, 6 centerpieces, 3 standing installations, and a chaotic bouquet station near the back for photos. Nothing fancy, but it gave me purpose. Something to hide behind. I'd just dropped a vase. Not a huge one, but enough to make a scene. Water everywhere. Peonies floating like wreckage. I crouched down, mortified, trying to clean it up before anyone noticed. That's when I saw the boots. Worn leather, a little muddy from the rain. And then a calm voice, low and warm. Here, let me help you. I looked up. And there he was. Jasper. He told me his name a few minutes later, but I remember the way he looked at me before I even knew it. Not like a man flirting. Not like someone assessing or judging or skimming past me like background noise. He looked at me like I mattered. Like I was visible. Like I wasn't just someone's wife or the woman arranging dahlias near the cheese table. I was me. And for the first time in years, someone saw that. He helped me mop up the mess. Made a small joke about peonies being drama queens, beautiful but always falling apart. I laughed. Not politely, but genuinely. That startled me. We didn't talk long. Just enough. He asked about the arrangements, said he liked how I played with texture. I blinked. Most people barely notice them. You've got a good eye, he said. There's a rhythm to the way you build. Like you're telling a story. No one had ever said that to me. Not about my work. Not about me. I think I nodded. Maybe smiled. But inside, I felt this strange rush. Like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know was suffocating me. I watched him walk away. Tall, broad-shouldered, but somehow soft around the edges. Like he'd seen too much, but still carried gentleness. His camera slung over one arm. The back of his jacket damp from the rain. I remember thinking, just for a second, that he didn't belong here. He felt out of place. Like a storybook character in the middle of my grayscale life. And I remember thinking, neither do I. That night, I went home to an empty house. Andrew was in Dallas. I reheated soup, answered a few emails, turned on the TV for background noise. Normal things. But when I lay down in bed, I didn't think about what I'd forgotten to do, or who I needed to call, or what groceries we were out of. I thought about a stranger kneeling beside me, his voice low and kind, and the way it felt to be seen again. I didn't know then that Jasper would become the crack in the dam, that the next time I saw him, everything would shift. But looking back, I think part of me did know. Some quiet, aching part of me that had been waiting, starving. And that was how it all began. I didn't expect to see him again. Not so soon. But 2 days later, I got a message from the gallery coordinator. Jasper's hotel had overbooked. Some glitch with reservations. And since we're a close-knit town, there's this volunteer list, residents willing to host artists or vendors when things get messy. I'd signed up months ago and forgotten about it. One of those things you say yes to because it makes you feel generous. Helpful. Human. They asked if I could offer the guest room for a night or two. Said Jasper was polite. Easygoing. Wouldn't be any trouble. And I said yes. I told myself it was just hospitality. A room. A warm bed. Clean towels. Nothing more. But something in me buzzed when I sent that reply. Like a frequency I hadn't tuned into in years. He arrived just after dinner. I offered him tea. He asked for chamomile. We sat in the kitchen, talking like people who weren't supposed to know each other. He told me about the countries he'd been to, the photos he wished he'd taken but didn't. About his mom, who raised him on her own and taught him that kindness wasn't weakness. I told him about flowers. About texture and color, and why I always tucked a single thistle into my arrangements, even when it didn't match. Because beauty should be a little wild, I said. And he smiled at me like I'd just read him poetry. We ended up having wine that night. Just 1 glass. Maybe 2. He told me, you seem like someone who gave up a part of herself to survive. And I remember freezing, because no one had ever seen that part of me. Not even Andrew. I didn't answer him. I didn't know how. I just swallowed and looked away, and he didn't press. Instead, we talked about our favorite cities. The way fog feels different in London than it does in Portland. How silence can be more comforting than conversation. It was effortless. Like a dance with no steps. Just movement. The second night, we watched a documentary together. Something about ancient architecture. I barely remember it. I remember the way the light flickered on his face, the way he leaned forward when something intrigued him. I sat on the opposite end of the couch, legs tucked under me, blanket up to my chin. At one point, our hands reached for the same mug. Just for a second, our fingers brushed. And I swear, I stopped breathing. I looked at him. He looked at me. And in that split second, I felt something tighten inside me, like a rope being pulled. But we didn't move, didn't speak, just kept watching. I don't know how to explain it. The air felt thick, Like the space between us wasn't empty, but full of questions neither of us were ready to answer. After it ended, he stretched, said goodnight softly, and disappeared down the hall to the guest room. And I sat there, still wrapped in the blanket, my heart pounding like I'd just outrun something dangerous. I told myself nothing happened. But something had. Something had begun. And I could feel it growing even in the silence. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each creak in the floorboards. Every sound felt intimate. Too close. I could feel him breathing down the hall. Not literally. Just aware of him. Of his presence. Of how my body felt different in my own house now. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't ashamed. Not yet. Just awake. That's what he did to me. He woke me up. The storm came out of nowhere. One of those early spring downpours that rolls in low and loud. The kind that makes the house feel smaller, closer. The lights flickered once. Twice. Then, nothing. Just darkness. And rain. I laughed, nervously. I remember saying something ridiculous like, well, guess the universe wants us to slow down tonight. And he smiled. But it wasn't a casual smile. It was that kind of smile you give someone when you're holding back something deeper. I lit candles. We gathered them in the living room like we were two kids at a makeshift camp. There was this warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. He sat cross-legged on the floor. I was curled up on the couch, legs tucked under me, my sweater slipping slightly off one shoulder. I was hyper-aware of everything, his closeness, the way he looked at the firelight, how his voice sounded quieter in the dark. We didn't speak much. Not at first. Just listened to the soft jazz humming from my phone and the thunder in the distance. Then, out of nowhere, he said it. I lost my mom last year. He didn't look at me when he said it. Just stared at the candle in front of him like he could still see her face in the flame. She was the only person who really got me, he continued. Since she passed, I've just been moving from one city to the next. Like if I stop, the grief will catch me. I didn't know what to say. So I just said the truth. I'm sorry. That sounds incredibly lonely. He nodded. And then, he looked at me. Right into me. You don't have to pretend anymore, he said. Just like that. No lead up. No explanation. And I felt something inside me shatter. Because he saw it, the act I'd been putting on for years. The polished smiles. The small talk. The I'm fines. He knew. And he wasn't even supposed to know me. I wanted to scream. To run. To bury it all again where it had been safe and buried. But instead, I just stood there. Trembling. And when I didn't respond, he stood too. Slowly. Carefully. Like he didn't want to spook me. We were inches apart now. I could feel the heat coming off his skin. Not from the candles. From him. He didn't touch me. Didn't lean in. Just waited. And I leaned forward. Just barely. Not even a kiss. Just closer. Closer than I should have been. His breath hitched. Mine did too. And I saw his lips part. Just enough. But I stopped. My body froze and my brain screamed, "What are you doing, Camille? You're married. You have a husband. You have a life." I blinked. Stepped back. Just an inch. Just enough to break the moment. And I whispered, "Good night." Then I turned and walked down the hallway to my bedroom. My hands were shaking as I closed the door behind me. I leaned against it like it was the only thing holding me up. My heart, it wasn't beating normally. It was thudding. Heavy. Loud. Like a warning. I crawled into bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept replaying the way he looked at me. The quiet sadness in his eyes. The tenderness I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't even about attraction anymore. It was something deeper. Something that made me feel more alive than I'd felt in over a decade. But I was terrified. Terrified of what I might do, if that moment ever happened again. The morning after that night, everything looked the same. My kitchen, my garden, the stillness outside. But nothing felt the same. I came downstairs before him, hoping for a few minutes to collect myself. My hands were trembling as I poured my coffee. I kept thinking, maybe he won't bring it up. Maybe I can pretend nothing happened. And he didn't. Bring it up, I mean. He came into the kitchen like it was just another morning, wearing a soft gray t-shirt, hair still wet from the shower. He smiled at me, gently, carefully, and I smiled back. But inside, my stomach was a war zone. We talked about nothing, the weather, the gallery, the power coming back on late that night. He thanked me again for letting him stay. I nodded. It was all so normal. Too normal. But the air between us? It was thick, dense, like walking through invisible fog, and every glance we exchanged carried the ghost of that almost moment. The day dragged on in slow motion. He went out to shoot photos in the woods nearby. I worked on a wedding bouquet, but I couldn't focus. Every rose I touched reminded me of his hands. Every silence felt like his absence. That night, I told myself I just needed to talk, just to clear the air, to make sure we were on the same page, that it was nothing, that we'd both imagined it. So I waited until the house was quiet, until I could hear nothing but the soft tap of his music through the guest room door. I knocked. 3 soft taps. My heart pounding like it wanted to break free. He opened it slowly, confused at first, then concerned. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Barely. Can I sit?" He stepped aside, and I walked in. Sat at the edge of the bed. The lamp was on low, casting golden shadows on the wall. A sketchbook lay open beside him, one of the pages half filled with an outline that looked suspiciously like my kitchen window. We sat in silence for a while, not touching, not even looking at each other, just breathing in the same space. But the silence had a pulse. It hummed in the walls, in my chest, in the stretch of space between us. And then, he said quietly, "I haven't stopped thinking about last night." Neither had I. He reached over, slowly, like he was giving me time to run. His fingers brushed mine. I didn't move away. Our hands stayed like that, barely touching, like we were testing how much the universe would allow. And then it happened. He leaned in, and this time, I didn't stop him. Our lips met, not urgently, not hungrily, just, honestly. It was soft, slow, like a question whispered in the dark. And the moment it happened, I felt something break open inside me. Not guilt, not yet. Something else. Relief. Like my soul had been exhaling for years, and finally remembered how to breathe. From there, it was like a dam bursting. Years of emptiness, of craving connection, of being invisible in my own life, came pouring out through touch. We didn't sleep that night. Not in the traditional sense. We laid tangled in sheets, in shadows, in truths we didn't dare say aloud. He asked about my childhood. I asked about the city he grew up in. He traced the scar on my wrist from high school and whispered, "You deserve softness." I cried, quietly, in the dark, and he kissed my tears like they were sacred. The days that followed blurred together in this strange dream state. He'd leave early to take photos. I'd go to the flower shop. But when we came home, it was as if time stopped. Secret smiles across the kitchen, lingering glances while I passed him the salt, fingers brushing under the table. At night, we tried to resist. We did. We told ourselves it was wrong. We swore we'd stop. But we never did. Because every time we were together, it felt right. Like my body had been waiting for his touch for years. And every time we weren't, the guilt started clawing at me. I'd hear Andrew's voice on the phone, checking in from his trip, distracted, always in a rush. And my stomach would twist into knots. But even then, I justified it. He left first, I'd whisper to myself. He stopped seeing me years ago. Still, the guilt was real. I started hiding things, deleting texts, covering up stories. watching Jasper sneak out early before the neighbors could see. He started leaving me sketches. Little thank you gifts. One was of me laughing over the sink. Another, my hands arranging peonies. They were simple, but they made me feel more known than I had in years. And with every drawing, with every stolen kiss, with every whispered word in the dark, I fell deeper, not just into the affair, but into him, into the feeling of being seen. And even though I knew we were balancing on a razor-thin edge, I didn't want to climb down, because up there, in that secret place, I remembered who I used to be. Andrew came back 2 days earlier than planned. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door swing open. My breath caught. Like my body knew before my mind caught up. He walked in like a man returning to his own fortress. Suit jacket draped over one arm, Bluetooth still blinking in his ear. The smell of airport coffee and unfamiliar places clung to him. "Hey," he said, setting his bag down. I forced a smile, hugged him. His arms wrapped around me, but they didn't hold me. Not really. They never did anymore. And I realized something right then. That hug used to feel like home. Now it felt like I was borrowing a life I no longer fit inside. He looked around the living room, paused, squinted. "What's this?" I turned. My heart stopped. A black and white photo Jasper had taken of me, standing by the garden trellis, light streaming through the vines. I had framed it, carelessly, stupidly, left it on the mantel with the others. I swallowed hard. "Oh, one of the local artists gave it to me. From the exhibit." "It's nice," he said, but his voice was flat. "Studying it too long, too carefully." I laughed too quickly. Changed the subject. Dinner. Work. Anything. But something shifted in his eyes that night. Like a curtain had lifted just enough to let a draft in. We tried to resume our routine. Dinner together. Him scrolling through emails. Me pretending not to be checking my phone every 5 minutes for a message from Jasper. But the silence between us wasn't peaceful anymore. It was haunted. That night in bed, Andrew reached for me. And I let him. Out of habit. Out of guilt. But my body didn't respond. I felt like a ghost in my own skin. My thoughts drifting to Jasper's touch, his voice whispering, "You deserve more than this." The next day, I met Jasper at the trail behind the art center. We didn't touch. We didn't have to. The tension was thick enough to carve. He looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like waiting for me had started to wear him down. "Come with me when I leave," he said quietly. "I'll be heading to Colorado next week. There's a studio there. An opening. We could start over." My heart dropped. Because for a second, I wanted to say yes. He wasn't asking for a fling anymore. He was asking for a future. And that terrified me. Jasper. I have a life here. A business. A husband. People who know me. Do they? He asked, eyes dark. Or do they just know the version of you you've been pretending to be? That hit like a knife. I didn't answer. I couldn't. We sat in silence. A breeze moved through the trees. Leaves fluttered around us like falling confessions. Back home, I started lying without even thinking. "Where were you?" Andrew asked over dinner. "Flower delivery. Got stuck in traffic." He studied me. "You've been different lately. Distant. Are you okay?" I smiled too quickly again. "Just tired. It's been a busy week." But my voice sounded hollow, even to me. The next morning, I caught Jasper sitting on the porch swing, a sketchbook in his lap. Eyes heavy. "You're slipping away," he said. Just like that. No preamble. No bitterness. Just truth. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "Do what?" he asked. "Be honest? Or be brave?" I stared at him, and suddenly I wasn't sure which one I was failing at more. It started unraveling faster than I could keep up. Andrew began noticing the smallest things, my scent lingering with a new perfume, my sudden need for late-night walks, the way I smiled at texts I claimed were from coworkers. And Jasper, he grew quieter, more withdrawn, still kind, but wounded. One evening, I walked into the guest room and found a sketch torn in half on the nightstand. It was me, lying in the grass, eyes closed, peaceful. I picked up the pieces and held them together like it was a prayer. But I knew something was breaking, and not just between Jasper and me. I was breaking. My lies were catching up to me, and the truth was no longer something I could hide in folded laundry or wedding rings. I had thought I could balance it all, keep my heart in two places, be everything to everyone. But all I was doing was becoming nothing to myself. And in the silence of those unraveling days, with guilt tightening around my throat like a noose, I began to wonder if the story would end with a confession or a collapse. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. One of those quiet, in-between hours when the house feels too still, like it's waiting for something to go wrong. Andrew was upstairs in the guest room. Said he was looking for an old USB drive. I was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, pretending things were normal, pretending I was still whole. Then I heard it. I turned, and he was standing in the doorway, face pale, jaw clenched. In his hand was one of Jasper's sketches. Not just any sketch. It was me, in bed, my hair sprawled across the pillow, sheets draped around me like smoke, eyes half closed, bare, intimate, impossible to explain. I had hidden it behind a stack of catalogs in my nightstand drawer. Clearly, not well enough. "What the hell is this?" Andrew asked. His voice wasn't loud, not yet, but it was laced with something colder than rage. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Nothing truthful, anyway. He threw the drawing down on the kitchen table. It slid across the surface like a knife. "Answer me, Camille. What is this?" My hands trembled as I reached for the back of a chair, steadying myself. Or maybe trying to hide. I whispered, "It's just a drawing. Of you. In our bed. Drawn by someone who's clearly seen you like this." "Camille, who is he?" The silence that followed was louder than anything I could have said. And then it broke. It turned into a shouting match. His pain came out sharp and reckless. Mine came out defensive, desperate. "How long has this been going on? It's not what you think. Don't insult me. Don't lie to me. Who is he? That photographer? The kid you let stay in our house? His name is Jasper." I didn't mean to say it, but I did. And just like that, it was out. No more hiding. I saw Jasper on the porch, holding his camera bag. He must have heard us. His eyes locked on mine, full of questions. And regret. Andrew saw him too. Stormed past me. Swung open the door. "You think you can just walk into my house and steal my wife?" Jasper didn't speak. Didn't flinch. He just looked at me. And I looked away. Because in that moment, I wasn't brave. I wasn't bold. I was broken. "Leave," I whispered to Jasper. "Please." His face didn't twist. Didn't harden. He just nodded. Slowly, almost like he already knew this is how it would end. He turned, walked down the steps, disappeared into the rain. I stood there, staring at the sketch on the table. The one thing that had captured me so beautifully had also shattered the life I built. The moment I saw the look on Andrew's face, that mix of betrayal, disbelief, and something almost childlike, like he'd just lost the one safe place he thought he had, I knew. I had broken something I could never fix. Not just my marriage, not just Andrew's trust, but a version of myself I would never get back. And in that wreckage, with my heart in pieces and guilt bleeding through every breath, I realized this wasn't just a love story gone wrong. This was a reckoning. Jasper left town the next morning. No note. No goodbye. Not even a text. Just silence. I stood at the window, watching the driveway, waiting for his car to pass by one last time. But he must have gone early. Or maybe he just didn't want to look back. I couldn't blame him. Andrew moved out 3 weeks later. Took only a suitcase and his laptop. left behind his wedding ring on the bathroom sink. I found it after my shower, glinting like a question mark in the light. He said he needed space to think. I didn't argue. What could I say? The damage was done. I spent the first few days moving through the house like a ghost. Every room echoed louder with just me in it. The couch felt too big. The silence felt too alive. I stopped going to the floral shop, canceled my appointments, canceled myself in a way. Until one afternoon, I walked into the backyard, still in my robe. I knelt in the dirt, pulled up a weed, then another. And I just kept going. For hours. By the time the sun set, my hands were caked in soil, my knees stained green, and something inside me had shifted. Gardening became my first step toward healing, my first honest ritual. Because flowers don't judge. And dirt doesn't lie. I started journaling, too. Pages filled with pain, then questions, then tiny flickers of clarity. Who was I before all this? Before Jasper? Before Andrew? Before I started shrinking myself to fit a life that had stopped seeing me? I went to therapy, cried through half the sessions, sat in silence for the other half. My therapist said something that stuck. Camille, sometimes the person you lose is the mask you were wearing to survive. That line hit me so hard I couldn't breathe, because I had been surviving for years. Not living. Not choosing. Just performing. The nights were the hardest. The bed still smelled like both of them, Andrew's cologne in the pillows. Jasper's sketch folded in the drawer, even though I should have burned it. I couldn't. Not yet. I cried. A lot. Over the betrayal. The shame. The ache of missing two people in completely different ways. I missed Andrew like you miss a song you used to love, but can't hum anymore. I missed Jasper like you miss a storm. Messy. Beautiful. Dangerous. And over too fast. But slowly, very slowly, something new took root in the silence. A different kind of strength. One that wasn't about holding it all together, but about letting it fall apart and staying anyway. I didn't just lose them. I lost who I was pretending to be. And in that raw, broken space, I had to find out who I really was. Not Andrew's wife. Not Jasper's muse. Just Camille. Me. Healing isn't pretty. It's not a movie montage or a perfect quote on a coffee mug. It's waking up every day and choosing not to numb yourself. It's facing the echo of your own choices and still showing up to water the garden. And for the first time in a long time, I was showing up for myself. It had been a year. 12 months of solitude, healing, mistakes, therapy, and truth. I had gone back to work. Started teaching floral design workshops. I even dyed my hair, something small, something just for me. Little pieces of me began to resurface, not like before, but different, more honest. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to go to a local art exhibit in town. I wasn't even sure why. I just felt drawn. It was hosted in the same community center where I first met Jasper. Strange how life folds in on itself like that. How it dares you to look back and not flinch. I walked in expecting nothing, and then I saw it. A photograph hanging alone, bathed in soft light. It was of wildflowers, delicate, sun-drenched, dancing in the wind. And beneath it, a single name on the placard, Jasper Whitlow. I froze. My pulse stumbled. My breath caught in my throat. And before I could convince myself to turn around and walk out, I looked up. He was there, standing across the room near the back wall. Leaner. Still tall. But something softer in his eyes. Less fire. More depth. He looked older. Wiser. Maybe I did too. He saw me. And in that quiet, crowded room, our eyes met. We didn't smile. We didn't move. We just stood there. For one suspended second, the world went still. Not in pain. Not in longing. Just peace. I didn't go to him. He didn't come to me. We didn't need to. Because some stories don't end with a kiss. Some don't even end with closure wrapped in a bow. Some stories end with a glance across a room, a nod between two people who once set fire to the walls of their lives and then rebuilt from the ash. I walked away, not because I was broken, but because I was whole. Jasper had been a mirror. He reflected who I used to be and who I could have become. But I didn't need him anymore to feel seen. I saw myself now. And that was enough. As I stepped out into the afternoon light, the sky cracked open with a hint of gold. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. No reunion. No epic apology. Just a woman who had finally learned how to stand in her own truth. And a man who once loved her enough to help her remember what that felt like. Have you ever loved someone you weren't supposed to? Felt that tug deep in your chest, the kind that makes your world blur, that whispers secrets you never thought you'd hear? Would you risk it all, your family, your reputation, your peace of mind, for just a chance at happiness, even if it meant losing everything else? I'm not here to judge. I'm here to share. Because love, real love, is never simple. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes it breaks us before it builds us back. So, tell me, what would you do if you found yourself caught between loyalty and desire? Between who you are and who you wish you could be? Comment below with your thoughts. I read every single one, and your story matters. And if you want to hear more stories that dive deep into the shadows of love, stories that don't shy away from the truth, subscribe to Cheating Confession Diary. Because here, we don't just tell tales of betrayal or heartbreak. We explore the human heart, with all its fractures and flames. Love, it's never black and white. It's every shade in between. Thank you for listening. Until next time.